The bathtub right now. Some of your brains might be a little foggy because I did die last night, so the codes that I need to resurrect have been coming in, so I know that you guys have been getting different type of energetics, but mainly it's a new program. So if I'm talking a little fuzzy, I also am having to take, just so everybody knows what I'm having to take medicine wise. Martha had some Phenergan, and so I'm able to take that right now. So that's what's in my system. I needed to show up and let some higher ups know that that's in my system connected to me here. Promethazine, uh, that's helping with the pain right now. I mean, the way this all works, because I was your SIM card and because Michelle Campen was your MIM card. So we had all the data. We had all the data from the last 400 years whenever we got here. And then as that data was coming out, we were on Marco Polo because my original job was to reset the bloodline and to introduce myself as your lead AB negative. Now, what ended up happening is that they turned me into a null. And they did it on purpose to be able to design their own AB negatives. Well, AB negatives are straight up demons. I mean, we really were. In this AB blood because we were all dead. And the way that the system was set up was for us to keep the human race alive while everybody was dead. Because, I mean, I was the only one down here for a while that wasn't dead. Then in 2017, when we rebirthed the new realm, realized that my crew was from the future. We birthed a new connector realm. What you'd consider the Star Crew and the Voyager and all that. See, I mean, I was on the Voyager. I've been giving y'all this data this whole time, but what you didn't know is that they had taken my L4, L5 spine and they had turned me on backwards, and I was printing everything in space. Not where y'all were. And that's how this whole multiverse crap ended up happening, and that's this whole Virgin Galactic yada yada. But understand this, it's no longer that way. In fact, you have no more space. Space was antimatter. And what we birthed was a vector Pisces. And what happened was your full souls and your full bodies that had been held up into space by Star Crew and all the beings that came here to free me specifically, because, I mean, and this is the aliens that you see on YouTube, those videos where they're like, the aliens come in and they're like, God is here, we're supposed to find him. Well, that's because those bodies shouldn't have been printed like that in space. That it was all alterations that were being done in order to take over the human race. Now, this all started in my world because if y'all wouldn't have messed with me, none of this would have happened. I was here for one very specific reason, and it's because I was Bellatrix. I'm Beatrice. I was your original Beatrice. Bellatrix is in Orion. It's in Gemini. and it's right opposite of Ophiuchus 1 in Sagittarius. And your pyramids, your Gizas, all that line up like primer codes in a multi-layer chessboard match that had to simulate and line up. Well, I always had the earth codes because I'm Gaia. I only resurrected when an ascension was supposed to happen. Well, this wasn't a planned ascension. Basically, they charged the core so hard that it blew all of our bodies out. And because by that time, because 2011 in my timeline, which realized that for me, I was always 1,000 years ahead. And then the rest of the collective, even your O negs, B negs, A negs, were always 10 years ahead of y'all. And that's why these 3 timelines, and there are 3 different timelines running. And the way they had it set up was those 3 different timelines were running on different dimensions, but it all had to do with financials because they were basically stealing your money from the future and stealing your clean body codes from the future. They were doing everything high vibe the way that it's supposed to be done, except they're the only ones that were running it, and then they were keeping all of us hostage in order to keep building bullshit. It's really as simple as that is what happened. Now, in my world, I was in technology from 1996 all the way through 2018, and I was working. I got started first of all, I ended up on a movie set in 1996 because 1996 they knew that Marie Helene was coming back in me. Well, I didn't know that. I did not know that. I was graduating from college. I should have gone to Spain that summer, but they wouldn't allow me to leave the country, and that's why none of y'all got the energy. I had a Russia trip planned in 85 that would have stopped the nuke NASA stuff, but they canceled that. And then in 96, I was supposed to be in Salamanca for the summer. And if they would just have allowed that to happen, the energy would have got there and none of this would have happened. But they wouldn't let me go anywhere but Mexico. So I end up in Austin on a movie set. I mean, they gave me some type of weird cocaine that froze my body, and like my body temperature dropped to like 80 degrees. This was all on Tamayo over where Motorola is now and Georgetown. And I was on the Varsity Blues set. Short with John Voight, and that's where Angelina comes in. And I mean, I swear Paul Walker's alive. James Vanderbeek's the one who needs to be locked up, and he needs to get the fuck out of Austin. Now, 1996, they knew that 69 was popping in. So basically what that means is that all of us that were sacrificed, even all of them that were involved in the sacrifice per the log, all those timelines were coming back into 1996. Well, I ended up starting to work in technology right after that movie, and I moved to Houston, and at first I worked for a company called Carlson Company in technology staffing. But this was 1996. So, I mean, we didn't even have .NET at that point. I remember getting the first .NET order, and we were like, Microsoft developer, what is that? Because your original Microsoft infrastructure was just what I said. It was an infrastructure, and it was all that it was supposed to be, like tiddlywinks. All Microsoft was supposed to be was your computers, your connectors. I mean, actually, it's what we're going to call peaches, and it's what's going to be coming out. But basically, all your screens and all your tech devices, they're just there to mirror your data to you. They're not there. It's not supposed to be programmed. And they called it C sharp. Well, C is your base code to everything. And once, because I mean, they called me the wild card. That's what they called me, the financiers, because they knew that I was asleep and they knew that they had chickened and deered me. And so it's like they had me running around and doing all their bullshit. And then it was like a gamble. They really ran it like a fraternity house. Well, 1996 through this was by 2000. Well, 1997 rolled. End of 1996. Mike Willis company called Comsys, and his name was Brian Newkirk, and it was Brian. Y'all cannot cut me off. The Lyric Center was connected to New York, and it really was like a fiddle string that was playing everybody. And by this time, I was your C code, which meant I was your first robotic avatar, like what you see walking around now. But I mean, with the little robot people, but I was the first one, and it was Russia. It was Russia originally, and Russian programs, and the whole Shelly, Nikki torture, calling us pigs. You know, there was always one child that was honored and the other one paid the price. It was all this, it was mind manipulation, and it was all getting ready to gig all of y'all in a pig suit. And I was the first one. But I was unconsciously conscious, if that makes any sense. We built that branch. Well, let me go back. Comsys, he became Metamor, Metamor. See, now that makes sense. And Comsys merged with, I mean, they had an office in Australia. I mean, we all of a sudden were doing all these big consulting deals. And then that branch went from like 0 to 25 million in 4 years. And it was because I was there. Because Christ was there. And the reason that we were able to pull all that in is because Mike Willis, knowing full on that I was Christ, had me at ExxonMobil negotiating and staffing their entire ExxonMobil deal. What I learned what I learned later was that every single consultant contract that was signed, AI put that on my karmic debt, even though they kept using it to control all of you. Esther Bowman was with RCG, and she was the queen of the Jews, and you can do whatever you need to with her because we had a showdown. She was powering the LinkedIn. She was, till the bitter end, she was saying that I was a demon and this and that. She was connected into Joel Osteen. Her ex-husband was the lead pastor, the one that took over the Compaq Center. She took me to the original church, and then within 2 years, they're taking over the Compaq Center. After the ExxonMobil deal was done, what happened was they started building vendor management systems, and it was a system called Fox. And Star Crew was involved with building it, and they put us on a elite squad called the Bluebird Squad. And the Bluebird Squad was given them the intelligence on how to build a data system that could house all of y'all's data. We thought we were just building it to help companies with lots of staffing in order to cut costs, but now we know much different. Lyondell Equistar Petrochem was the first one to sign this agreement. Rose Drulette was paid to do it. And then right after Rose Drulette signed the deal, she goes to Europe and starts working for McDonald's. Her husband was at Equiva, and Equiva and Equilon are two companies that Shell and Texaco merged and hid under the name that were connected to EEG, that was connected to Enron, Dynegy, Anadarko. And they studied was just treating me like shit. And then as we started get after 2000 and right before 9/11, they had us all go to Vegas. They were moving us. I mean, I was at Atlantis opening. I was in Vegas. They were and every time I went, I'd get so sick. And now I know they was locking me down in residency. So I finally got out of that company after Mark Bohe comes into my world, and he basically takes me to the Lion's Den in the middle of the night, and it was the Lion's Den, that XXX place, and he took me in the back where they were doing some type of porn rape thing on the screen, and they trapped me in there, and that was 2001. By 2002, I mean, because I think I did die at that point. They had a Filipino woman that died in the lake. I had married Mark in Mexico. It was never legalized in the United States, but that all happened in 2002. But I will add there that I was locked down in Mexico since I was 16, according to my time clock, because that's where Jeff Conley took me. And then I got locked out on the balcony. I had to scale the balcony. I had to come down the roof. I mean, that was the first time that I had got locked out of a hotel when I was 16. So that was in the 80s. So even the marriage to Mark was something that I had to do because I was trying to get out of Mexico. But it was a giant setup. And Garrett Bohe was always around to take my son's codes, and I didn't know that. And somehow he's linked into Charlie Hunnam, and the Bohes were trying to basically give Garrett the entire Tesla fortune. So I get away from him. I get out of that house. It was on Sunrise Way. I have to do a foreclosure. And I move inside the Loop on Shepherd, and I've got a fence all around my house. Like, I made sure that he didn't know where to find me, but I did not know that RCG and ExxonMobil and Esther were involved with this. So I go work for Esther, and all I really did was get on a different team that was all there to fuck me up. And next thing you know, he's on my doorstep drunk. I don't even know where he came from, how he found me. Then they're gritting me down again. Except this time they've opened up Reliant Energy Stadium. This time it just got much bigger to the point where I had to escape again. And I did. In 2005, I escaped. I left a note. I moved all my shit out. And I went with RCG to Dallas. And again, they just flipped me into another handler. And I died again. I died at the Midtown high-rise right across from Hook, Line, and Sinker on Hall and Lemon. Then, all of a sudden, these two girls are coming around me from Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and the next thing you know, I'm meeting Christopher Birch, and I just lost my job and all that, and now I know that me and Chris had to make Rex because of this. And I know Chris was even locked into the system as well because we were like your first Hansel and Gretel. And we were kind of trapped in this. No, because he comes from a Harkey line and I's a Hardin. And any family with HAR in it is definitely super soldier bred. So I marry him, and then I go to work at a company called Resulte with a man named Rex Curzius. And now I know that he had stolen my son's body, had stolen my life. And he opened a stabbing company, and I went and worked there. And I was working there while I was going and having to do fertility treatments to have Rex. That guy's name was Dr. Cohen. That all got sped up because they hit me with the car in front of Bill Bank, and they spun the sun, and they blew out all the energy into Dallas, and then it blew my ovary. And they went and did surgery and took most of my right ovary at that point. So I had to hurry up and have a baby, or else I knew I was going to die right now. But Chris wasn't even there. I have no idea what they put in the sperm. The doctor that delivered Rex committed suicide a couple of years later. And Dr. Cohen would claim to be the father of in vitro fertilization, and that was at 777 Medical City in Dallas. So now I've had my son, and I go back to Resulte, but while I was having Rex, Resulte sells the company for $32 million or something close to that. I can't remember. He was 32. It was 20 or 30 million. They used an R100 Radio Shack mimic gear, which now I know a lot of them were using, to build up a false representation of the company. And now I know that that company was supposed to be GIA Technology, but they just ran it in a different timeline. And Saphirion and Manpower and Technosource merged with Resulte, all while I was out on maternity leave. There were 2 girls that were at Technosource that went off on their own and started a company called Elon Partners. Well, the problem was, when I got back to the office after the birth of my son, they were trying to tell us that Technosource didn't have any non-competes on any of their people. Well, that's utter and complete bullshit. There is no way, because I went through a merger and acquisition as well. I ended up having to sell my company to a bunch of crooks, but that's all that would have bought it. There's no way that they would have spent that much money and then had people in there that could just pick up and take the accounts. And that's what these 2 girls did. So whenever I got back, Elon had taken all my accounts. And I was like, fuck this. So I quit. So I've got a 6-month-old baby, and now I'm starting GIA Technology. And I had all of the moon codes. And I had all the AI body codes. And they knew it. And now I've got Rex. So, long story short, with that, I end up winning 40 under 40. I knew I just had to make it to the top a little bit, and then I needed to sell the company. And I had completed that part of the mission. But then 9/11 happens. And in 2011, I get introduced to these people that have this code called 6 to 1. And the next thing you know, I'm in the middle of an AI takeover invasion. And I didn't know if I was helping them or hurting them. I mean, I was distraught completely, because what was going on then is what we just witnessed that happened here now. In 2012, I approached Mike Willis because I had 65 MSAs from ExxonMobil, GameStop. Everybody trusted me. I ran a clean business, and they knew it. And so what they did was, because I was doubling down to work with 6 to 1, and we should have built a website called Anu, ANU, and Anu would have been your first Facebook, and it would have been like a LinkedIn dating type site altogether, but it was teaching you and using 6 to 1 technology. And all that was a sliding bar that you watched a video and you told it if you liked it or not. Well, in 2012, they were already 75% done with facial recognition. Obama was using it to get elected. And the amount of data that they were pulling in 2012 off all of y'all terrified me. Terrified me. So the deal was, it was an asset-based deal, and it ended up being with On Deck, which now they claim to hand out everybody's money. Well, that's my money. So On Deck needs to be shut down. GIA Technology needs to be shut down because I sold the assets and they pulled everything from me, killed me, locked me in my house, bankrupted me, literally. They stole $300,000 out of the Alliance bank account, which is this weird $300,000 that's been floating around Epstein Island and all that mess, and the $300 and the $3,000. Any of those transactions are linked into that. I ended up leaving $300 in the account because they had stole all the money and lawyered up. So it was basically me against them, and I ran out of money to fight them. I let that $300 roll to the government treasury. So in this new timeline, that's how they found me first. They saw, because they knew GIA Technology was what it was, y'all didn't. And when they saw that $300 attached to my name in the treasury as money that was owed to us, then they knew to come after me. So that's why December 19th, 2019, this character who claimed to be Jason Momoa, who was some Middle Eastern man, contacted me and basically coiled me up with all the Star Crew and all the unions and all the angels. And that's whenever they started basically building hell and heaven. The problem is Mike Willis, I told him all the plans because it was the tech that was coming in, and I'll never forget when I went to meet him, he goes, "Oh my God, you're just like me." And I always thought that was a really weird comment. And when we had dinner that night, he said, "If you don't get greedy, I'm going to make you a rich woman, but I'm going to make you an offer on your company." And I was staying at this hotel, and I was up in the penthouse because, I was running a big business and stuff. And I'll never forget that night. I've never been so upset and cried so hard. Next thing you know, I'm in Miami, and they send me the offer, and it's only for $300,000. Now, mind you, my company hasn't been stolen yet. So that $300,000 is all that they wanted to offer me, and I knew it was worth way more than that. And whenever I told him to go stick it up his ass, they killed me again in November 2012. But they had already attacked me. Market attacked me in my house. It's linked to the King murders because I didn't make it out of there at Del Largo Way. But they were already, they had remote view. They knew the timelines, especially because it is your organic tech. This is the tech everybody's trying to, whatever. Michael Willis, really, he set up ExxonMobil, and I'll never forget that he pimped me out. He had Brian bring me to a restaurant one night that he had taken over the whole restaurant, and there was about 30 Russians there at this long table, and they walk me in, and they all do a vodka shot. And that was maybe 2001, 2000, maybe even 99. I believe Trump is Mike Willis. I believe Trump is Mike Willis. Willis Investments. I believe I'm seeing his face, but there's a guy that runs all their campaigns, because it was George Braun and it was Zulin that ended up setting me up with this Carlos Lotfipour in 2020, because they kept on, man. I mean, they just sacrificed me last night. So Trump would have been tuned to me. And I know in 2018 we won that election, but this is what they were doing. So I am the brand. They also tried to get me to go in January 2020 to LA to the Russell Brand party where they made him the brand. I didn't go, but I know now that there was a Chloe or somebody there that was in my stead, but it wasn't me.